The regular city council meeting for Monday, October 14th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Iser?
Here.
Bellinger?
Here.
Wise? Grimes?
Here.
Gilroy?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
I did receive a call from Councilman Weiss this evening asking to be excused. Unfortunately, he cannot be here.
I make a motion to excuse Councilmember Weiss from this evening's meeting.
I'll support it.
All right, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm also looking for approval of the agenda as submitted, or if there's any changes that need to be made.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
All right, thank you.
Support.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we have an opportunity for audience participation with a maximum of 5 minutes per presentation. And I just wanted to say I've noticed an MSU journalism student out there, so I'm going to ask her to introduce herself.
Sure. Do I have to come up to the
Yep.
bench?
Yes, you do.
I'm Claire Heisey. I am a junior at Michigan State studying journalism, minor in broadcast media. I do know what a bench is because my dad is Plymouth Township supervisor. So this is not an unfamiliar scene for me, and my mom is a judge in Detroit, so I'm very familiar with
All right.
city officials and court proceedings and everything, and I'm happy to be here.
Great.
So,
Well, welcome, Claire.
thank you.
Thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you quite often this
Yes.
semester. All right. Anybody else for audience participation? Yes, come up to the podium, state your name and address if you wouldn't mind.
I'm Michelle Lasker. I'm the Executive Director of the Ingham Conservation District. I spoke to the council earlier this year about this new project that we've got going on that's really focused here in the city of Williamston, smart management of microplastics in the Great Lakes. So we're trying to better understand and figure out how to manage microplastic pollution. So this is those plastics that are 5 millimeters or smaller. They're pretty ubiquitous. I've been wanting to come back and see you sooner than this, but I didn't want to come back until I really had something kind of substantive to show you. We do have a new fact sheet on the project and microplastics in general, so
Great.
I have copies.
Sure.
Pass them around that you
Thank
can
you.
look at when you have a minute. We're about a year in. It's a 3-year project. Few things are happening. So this is a project the grant is being held by Wayne State University. Williamston is one hub, and then Pontiac is another. The engineering department has a prototype developed now for a new sensor that can actually detect, measure microplastics in water. We're going to have 4 deployed here in Williamston next year, and then there will be some deployed in Pontiac as well. So that's kind of the technical aspect of the project. It'll tell you how much is in there, how much microplastic, and actually what types of plastic, which will be really helpful. These are hopefully going to be disseminated, across the whole Great Lakes region, not specifically targeting Williamston, just that you guys are willing to be a test point for us.
Great.
We had some focus groups here in Williamston. We were really pleased that NISA was able to host us for 3 separate, and we had lots of different community leaders and people really involved in the community and some regional partners who were interested in water quality and environmental protection and stuff to really talk about what people know, what they're concerned about, and what are some of the hurdles to dealing with this. As I said, we developed the fact sheet, and I've written a grant for 300 of these laundry bags. So these are bags that you use. Fibers released from synthetic clothing when you wash them in your machine is one of the biggest sources of microplastics that get into the water. These bags are supposed to trap pretty much all the plastics released from your clothing while they're being washed. So I've applied for a grant to buy 300 of these, and we're hoping to have one in 300 houses in Williamston, people who are connected to the system. So as long as people are willing to provide some feedback on how they use it and some other questions that we're going to want to get into, the bags will be free.
Fantastic.
So I'm just hoping that we can work together a little more closely. I'm hoping to be a lot more present in the community, like January through May especially of next year. Just making sure people are aware of microplastics, aware of the project, and aware that these are going to be available. And then hopefully be able to start giving them out to people probably in May is what we're thinking.
And would you want to possibly have residents be able to pick them up from you directly, from your office, or from City Hall?
I think it'd be
or-
much easier if I came here.
Okay.
So
All right.
anything you guys can do to help facilitate some locations for me,
Sure.
help to share that information.
Okay.
Is there someone that I should kind of be a point of contact with in
Corey,
terms
who would
of?
you want that to be?
You can start with me and then we'll go
Okay.
from there. Yep.
Okay, so if we want to put an article or some Facebook
Sure.
posts, things like that, you can help us do that?
Mhm.
Okay,
Great.
fantastic. Well, then we'll be in touch.
Just one question, how
Yeah.
many volunteers are you looking for to have tested, how many?
300
300 total?
300 households.
in Williamston.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad. All right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Michelle, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure when you come in and give us the update and everything. And
Yeah, I'll have to be seeing, hopefully I'll be seeing more and more of me, and I want to give credit to Scott, because he's been really involved in
Yeah.
showing up at a lot of our meetings and groups and helping this process along, so that's been wonderful.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else from the audience that would like to come forward right now? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to our council candidates. As you know, we have an open seat available, and I am just going to go in order of how the applications were in our packet. So first up is going to be Mr. Kent Hall. If you'd come forward, please, and introduce yourself to council and give us a little bit of why you would like to be on council.
Kent Hall, 509 Red Cedar, commonly known as Wrinkle Street, for 55 and older communities.
Sorry, could we give Mr. Hall the floor, please? Thank you.
Anyway, I stepped down from the council a couple months ago, 3 or 4 months ago. Had some issues, resolved quite a few of them, and when there was an opening, I said, well, I'll make myself available. If you've got someone that has not served and maybe it's time for someone else, that's fine with me, so it won't hurt my feelings. But I want to make myself available. This month I've been in Williamston 10 years. My hometown used to be Linden, now it's Williamston. Been very involved from Planning Commission to Parks and Rec, the City Council for 4 or 5 years now. So anyway, I'll make myself available, but like I said, if you've got someone that's new, I'd like to see us keep turning over, as long as we don't have anybody disruptive, and we haven't had in years now,
Right.
so we're on the right track. So I'd like to see that continue. We're still available if you have any issues that I can be of help regardless. That's it.
Thank you. And I do have to apologize because Jeff's application was on the back of my agenda, so we went with second instead of first. I apologize. So, Jeff Gorsley, would you please come up?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Jeff Gorsline, 545 Cedar Ridge Drive. I'm so thrilled to be here. Been in this community for quite some time. My family goes way back to horse-drawn. I can admit that. Graduated in '95, and I have a business here in town. I run a nonprofit here in town. I've got a building as well. And this community is very important to me, so I would love to have the honor to be a part of council and to help make some good difference and make this town a pleasure, or more of a pleasure for people to live in.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. John McGee, come on up.
Oh, thank you.
You're the next contestant.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, my name is John McGee. I've lived in Williamston for a little over 10 years. My wife and I have 2 kids here. My wife currently serves as the librarian for the school district here. I work primarily in Metro Detroit at Medina University, but saw a council seat open, thought I'd put my hat in. Again, living here 10 years, really fell in love with the place. I've always kind of been an outsider with small cities and towns. We moved up from Memphis, Tennessee when I was a kid to Eaton Rapids. A little bit of a different culture, but when my wife and I decided to have kids, we moved here back to her hometown and love it. Anytime I go travel internationally, I'm always bringing Old Nation beer. Which is great. So, no, I really do love this town, and just thought there's a position open. Thought it'd be a good opportunity to serve.
Great.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and our final applicant is Jeff Rowland. Come on down.
Good evening, everyone. Jeff Rowland. Happy to put my hat in the middle of the room for the vacancy on the city council. Been in Williamston for 5 years now or so. A couple kids here, going to the elementary school, and been serving on planning for the past few years. Chaired a couple. Definitely love this place, why we chose to set down roots here. And feel like there's a lot I can offer city council based on my just experience and background and subject matter expertise, as well as being on planning. You get a unique perspective as to what may need to be done to generate additional revenue. So I have some creative ideas there as well to help everyone out. And yeah, it just would be an honor to fill this vacancy. Initially I stepped down from chair recently with the intention of going off this next year and running publicly and getting voted in. But once this vacancy opened up, figured, hey, it's a time, and I'd love to spend the next year showing what I can offer city council. So thanks for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you. Thank you to all the applicants for coming this evening and just giving us a little flavor of what you might have to offer. And I appreciate all of your applications. And so what will happen is next council, we will come together and we will make a motion to put a nominee forward, and then council will vote on it. But what I also want to mention is to all of the applicants is that we do have various city boards that do have vacancies on them. So if you don't find an opportunity to be able to serve on council this time around, please consider a board that has a vacancy, because we can always use very, very good, talented individuals that are willing to give up their time and talents and resources to the city. So I thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move right along then to the council meeting minutes for September 23rd. Did anybody see anything that needed to be changed or amended, or can we move this forward for approval?
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, we have accounts payable.
I had a chance to sit down with Corey for a few minutes and go through all the checks and accounts. And I had a few questions, they were answered, but I would like to make a motion to pay checks 72321 through 72409 in the total value of $2,091,040.32.
Any questions regarding any of the accounts payable that might have jumped out to anybody? I know Noah said he had some questions, but they were answered, so. All right. We'd like to help move that along.
Second.
All right, thank you. Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bizzard,
Yes.
Bellinger.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, on to our action items for this evening. It's a little bit of a short list, so we'll go ahead and get started with the first item, precinct consolidation. Holly.
So in your packet, I prepared you a memo. This probably comes as a surprise to everybody because it is a very new concept for Williamston. We did get out the sign-ups already for being on a permanent AV list, and we were surprised this morning, our box was full of returns already, and we went out like, what, Saturday or something, so. We're getting good feedback from that. Yes. Voting from home is obviously a new concept for people. Williamston hasn't had an election all year, so we've kind of held off to not confuse everybody. But I think that this consolidation will be a good thing.
Okay.
We're right under the limit for it, so we are eligible. A lot of changes have happened with Proposal 18.3, and we're all trying to figure out how we're going to manage them, and one of the big things was having a clerk or a deputy in the office all election day, so here. With this, the AV County Board could be in council chambers, and so we could at least be split up in handling, two different sections of the elections.
Okay.
So ultimately, it's an election commission decision, but I would appreciate the council's support to do so, to move forward with it.
So what this would mean is there wouldn't be a north and south precinct anymore. It would just be all of Williamston. So when you
have the same ballot,
right,
you wouldn't have that confusion like
right.
you know.
So is that gonna help, reduce costs for printing, because you're only printing one ballot?
It might do a little bit, but probably not a lot.
Would that help reduce staff, or would you still need the same amount of staff on a voting day, election day? Because you're not
We
splitting
would
up the two
need
sides.
Less up there, and
Okay.
we need still a few here.
Okay, all right.
So it could reduce some of that a little bit.
But
We
you-
just have to kind of figure out how it's gonna work. And 2020 is gonna be such a big
Right.
year for elections.
Right.
That we are gonna wanna be fully staffed at first and then try to figure out how much the
Right.
number should
Well,
be.
and according to this too, there's 3 different election time periods next year. The early spring, August for the state primary, and then November general election, so
And
you'll have a
the-
busy year.
The March election, we're looking at having at least 2, possibly 3 ballots.
Okay.
So, so you would have a Republican and then a Democrat ballot, and then if there's a proposal, you'd have a separate ballot
Okay.
just for that too. That would also decrease some of our, confusion with people getting their ballots, and we won't be sending the wrong precinct or person the wrong ballot, so that is helpful too.
And consolidating, you feel this is manageable for
I do.
the voter staff and everything?
And
that
we
you
have until November 11th, so we can kind of see,
Okay,
how those returns are coming in.
okay.
And kind of judge from there. If they're just not coming in, then maybe we just don't do it. But at
And-
this time,
And what Holly's talking about, and I'm sure most Williamston residents receive this in their mailbox, but this is the absentee voter registration. It's a small postcard that you send back, and it just allows you to be able to vote from
Yes.
home and not have to come into the polls, and
vote from home.
It's very
vote at your
different.
leisure.
yeah, very different, but it's kind of the trend, like you said, so good
People are
job on
busy.
getting this out and everything.
Mhm.
All right, does anybody have questions for Holly? I
I-
see Dan, your hand's raised.
I have a couple. I think the absentee voting from home is a great idea, because a lot of people don't wanna wait in line, hopefully this will encourage people to vote that maybe don't vote because they don't wanna deal with the hassle. My only question is, right now with the 2 precincts set up in the gym, then you have 2 lines going to the 1 precinct. Will you still have, I'm assuming you're still gonna have all the same
The
number of
booths,
voter
everything.
booths set up and all that, will be using 1 tabulator then over there?
We
or-
would still have one tabulator. They're extremely expensive.
Okay.
Extremely expensive.
So that puts
Um,
one
the
here
I-
and one over there.
The thought is the absentees are gonna grow so much that it will essentially take over that. So we can't have a tabulator here and up there.
Okay.
Many communities that have already done this are seeing that huge change. They are seeing that giant increase in absentee voting. So that's what we're anticipating, is that increase.
Okay. Other questions for Holly? Okay, all right. So it looks like we do have a requested action.
I'd like to make a motion to show support in consolidating election precincts 1 and 2 and the creation of the absentee voter counting board.
All right, thank you,
Support.
thank you. Holly, will you call the roll?
Gilroy,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bizzard,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Rhines.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Holly, for all your information, and please keep us up to date with it and let us know how it goes. All right, next we have Michigan Public Safety Communication Systems Agreement. Chief?
Yes. As you can see from my letter, there's a state of Michigan contract that I'm looking for approval and to be signed by the mayor. All police agencies and fire agencies in the county are dispatched by one centralized Ingham County 911 central dispatch that is funded through phone surcharges and a county millage. It's basically a user agreement. Everybody that's on the system, our current one, Harris system, is going to be at end of support next fall. And the decision has been made to go on to the state system, which for us is going to give better coverage and interoperability because all the counties surrounding us use that. And so it's basically a user agreement. There's a cost component, and that's why I asked Central Dispatch to put that letter in here. They are covering all the initial startup costs, and there are no anticipated ongoing costs. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have on that. It's a pretty straightforward form contract from the state.
Right. Yep.
It's had legal review.
That's what it looked like to me. Does anybody have questions for Chief?
Chief, if you were to add radios, how much are you looking at that's gonna cost?
They're expensive. I do not anticipate adding any radios. We currently have 12. We have a base station, 4 mobile units, and 7 portable units. And I don't have the exact cost of the radio itself. It's gonna be about a $4,000 radio because there's different levels of encryption in it. I just don't see the need for us to have additional radios. Now, for fire service, that's a different thing.
So, is there an annual fee that is gonna be associated with these that the city's gonna look at, would be increased what we're
At this
paying now?
time, there is not. I say at this time, it's with the state. And when the state and county run out of money, they send it down to us. But right now, there is not any anticipated. Right now, we are paying a $100 annual mic fee to the county.
Okay.
The state of Michigan used to have a $200 mic fee. They no longer have that. And so you'll see in the contract where there's a stipulation that annually they could, with 12-month notice, give cost. That is not anticipated at this time.
Great. Great question. Any other questions for Chief? Okay. All right, looking for this to move forward.
I make a motion to approve the attached Michigan Public Safety Communications System MPSCS member subscriber agreement.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right, Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Smith,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Ballinger,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. All right, next on our action item list, we have engineering services contract amendment, East Middle Street and Mullet Street project. Scott.
All right, well, in your packet is a memo from me, and I'd like to tell you that I do know the difference between accept and accept.
Okay,
And
great,
so-
thank you.
Caught that later, and I was like,
Appreciate that.
oh, darn it, that's already off the print. So anyways.
We'll let that slide.
Thank you. Our engineering company, Spicer, is obligated to do inspection throughout the construction project, and they estimate the time that needs to be put into it. The contractor worked on Saturdays, which wasn't estimated. They also worked much longer days than what was anticipated, averaging around 12-hour days. They had anticipated about 2 hours of overtime a day, so there you go. There's more overtime coming on that. The other thing that happened is the project did not get to the open traffic date the way that it was supposed to for a lot of other reasons. Thereby, they needed to be out there more. Spicer is here tonight. We have with us John Bradley and Rick Bourne, in case you guys have some questions on that. The way that this works with these contracts that go through MDOT is that they have the grant amount that applies towards construction, but the local agency is responsible for the engineering portion of the project. And people ask, well, if the contractor's late, what about those fees? Those fees go to the state of Michigan, they don't go to the local agency.
Yeah, and we know we had several delays on the project. You know, we won't get into the dirty details of that or anything like that, but we know it probably took a little bit longer than anticipated, and we appreciate everything that Spicer did for us throughout the project, and, you know, I'm sure Scott, you guys all work very well together. This wasn't your first project, you know, here, so I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions regarding this increase? Or amendment, I should say.
I did also note that earlier we had gone to council and asked for an increase in the construction side of things because there were line items that needed to be paid for that were above the contract quantities. The final accounting is being wrapped up at this point. There will be, the contract for construction will actually be likely under the bid amount because of other items that weren't performed to the contract quantities that were in the contract.
That's including the stuff in here that's still unbilled. Because as you go through here, there are some dates when it says still unbilled amounts or.
You had something specific to point to again, so that.
That's what I'm trying to
Dr.
find.
Yeah, I don't know that I had anything from the construction accounting in here, in the packet. I guess what I'm telling you is, in a roundabout way,
I
with.
guess what I was thinking of was when you see the part down here that says work yet not to be, work yet to be completed, not included above. If there is more, it's on page
It's at the very
9C,
bottom,
page
yeah.
4. When all that comes in, are we thinking we're still gonna be within budget?
I think what I would like to do is defer to our folks from Spicer and make them answer that question.
So the answer to your question would be yes, we've anticipated those items that are yet to be completed in our estimate of work to be done yet.
Okay,
We're figuring we're gonna come in right around contract,
okay,
the MDOT contract amount.
okay. All right. Other questions?
Mayor,
Yes.
just one other note. If you remember back to our budget process, when we budgeted this project, we also included a 10% contingency.
Yes.
And so with the engineering amendment and the earlier contract amendment for construction, we were about 10,000 over that contingency. If the contract does come in under bid price, when that all gets adjusted, this engineering amendment should be within that 10% contingency
Okay,
when all is said and done.
all right, great.
It's a wash.
Hopefully, close.
You'd like to not have to use your 10% contingency,
Right.
but there's a reason we put that in there.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, if there's no other questions for our representatives from Spicer or from Scott, I'm looking for this to move forward.
I have a question real fast.
Okay,
When do we expect this job to be fully completed?
that's a great question.
It's a good question. There is a piece of asphalt at the very end around Mill Street that needs to be wedged up. There was an incorrect grade on that, but it's just past the concrete part. And then they will adjust the gravel on Mill Street so that that pocket of water doesn't sit there. That occurred because they had a lot of other material piled up there and there was a mistake made when the paving was happening.
So they're gonna mill it out and adjust the grade, or?
They're gonna,
Yes.
yeah, they're gonna mill a butt joint in there and then
Okay.
they can wedge things up. And it should
We
match.
still have road construction signage and everything up?
There is some striping that did not get performed on Saturday. The subcontractor came in on Saturday to do some striping, and it's not complete yet. They got, I don't know, they get about 80% of it done, and.
Yeah, they're just missing pavement markings at Grand River.
Right. And then there's some small punch list items that have to be performed, but the project can perform right now to its intent. Cars can drive on it, that type of stuff. There's some small things with some structures that they have to fix that's on a punch list.
Okay,
We are pressuring the contractor.
all right.
I just know that the season's changing
Yep.
fast.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Okay, well, with that being said, if there's no other questions or discussion, looking for this to go forward.
I'll make a motion to approve work directive change number 1 of the professional engineering services contract with Spicer Group for the East Middle Street and South Mullet Street project in the amount of $50,200, not to exceed. Total contract price will be amended to $192,500, not to exceed.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you. No further discussion. Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Smith,
Yes.
Bizzard,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes. All right, our last action item for this evening is Water System Cross Connection Program Professional Services Agreement.
That's me.
Scott?
We have utilized a company called HydroCore, it used to be called Hydro Design, since 2010 to work with us on our water system. We have a requirement to do cross-connection control. There's the state now EGLE requires that we have a program. You can do these things in-house, you can contract them out. We've been contracting since 2010. What we looked at with that was in order for us to have this in-house and the amount of training that would have to happen and staff time and so forth, it made more sense to contract this service. The company that we're using actually is the company that puts on trainings throughout the state of Michigan to larger facilities. So they've put together a really nice database. They work with us to make the appointments. They schedule appointments to go into businesses. It's primarily commercial industry, that type of thing, or institutional. The state is moving towards doing more things on the residential side, so we're keeping abreast of what those requirements are. But we're trying to be mindful of how that's received by our customers. We try and do things on that aspect with our staff as we go in for meter change outs and that type of thing. So we do take a little bit of this on internally, but we're not like a big commercial establishment.
Okay.
We've been very pleased with their service. They did have a provision in the last contract, which was done in 2016, that we could have a 2-year extension on the contract with just a cost of the consumer price index increase.
Okay.
So any questions?
Just a quick one. I noticed that most of the facilities of the 238 are on a 5-year cycle. So in the database, do you know, are we meeting those requirements on a basis to get that?
Yes, I have an annual meeting with HydroCore, and we go through how we allocate the time, and then the 238, that number's fluctuated, you know, it's been as high as 250 something down to 238. They base how many, and what the contract price is, on how many have to be done to do that 5-year cycle, and it's spaced out. In fact, back in the 2013 contract, when we came up for renewal in 2016, we actually reduced the contract amount because we found that we could space things out a little bit better with that 5-year program. And we dropped our monthly cost.
So you've got a quality system in place to double check it?
We do.
Okay. Any other questions for Scott regarding the cross connection program? Okay. With that said, I'm looking for a motion.
Make a motion to authorize a 2-year renewal option in the August 22nd, 2016 professional service agreement with HydroCorp of Troy, Michigan for the Williamston Water System Cross Connection Control Program. The contract would extend for 2 more years with an annual amount not to exceed $6,360 plus the consumer price index.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, Holly, call the roll.
Kuzer,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right, that concludes our action items for this evening. We'll move right along to discussion items, and Corey, you've got a memo in here regarding a donation of land to the city.
Thank you very much. So in your packet, there's a couple pictures that I'm gonna refer to. One is within the memo that shows the location of the land. For the benefit of the audience, this is a parcel located off of Lynn Road near the Forest of Nottingham subdivision. So the developer of the new phase of that subdivision has determined that he cannot adequately develop this back parcel. It's about a 17-acre parcel. Over 9 acres of it is encumbered with wetlands. There's a piece toward the southern end, about 7.5 acres, that would be developable someday, but in order for him to bring the roads across that it's cost prohibitive. So he might be able to locate a couple houses over there, but the expense of bringing the infrastructure to it is just too much. So incidentally, he asked if the city would be interested in taking that piece off his hands as a donation. I think he's looking at it as a way to get a tax write-off, which is well and good. So we've looked at it. We obviously understand that it's largely encumbered by wetlands. The value of it would be for any future developments in that quadrant by Marendorf's Meats, which there's a couple access drives that would support a future development, but those parcels have been vacant for a long time, as well as the parcel that is bordered by Williamston Road and I-96 on the eastern side. So there's potential that this parcel could be valuable to that as well. From a city perspective, we don't see a whole lot of downsides to exploring this with the owner. One thing that we did note is that there's an existing drain assessment on the parcel. The payoff amount is a little under $5,000. There's 3 years remaining, including this year. So that would be an expense, even if it's a tax exempt parcel, you still have to pay for the drain assessment. And then, of course, if there was a future drain project, just like any other city properties, we could potentially have that cost as well, while we held on to it. In order to move forward, he's explored a couple options. One would be donating it to the city, and I think that's his preferred option. He did mention if the city wasn't interested, that he would be looking to like a nature conservancy, which in that case, it may well be off the tax rolls anyway, with very little likelihood of that back 7 acres ever being developed. So from that perspective, staff's position is that we should continue to work with the developer on a donation. It is something that would have to be formally approved by council. He would have to pay for an appraisal to value the parcel for his tax purposes. And then we would have some time and expense to draft the warranty deed and execute the purchase. But I didn't want to move forward and lead him on if there wasn't an interest at council in doing so. And so this is presented as a discussion item to get any feedback or questions that you might have.
Well, I know previously, Corey, when we had to do a land transfer, we were able to use wetland over near DPW, and that was able to satisfy that with DEQ, or whoever that entity was at that time. So if we were to accept this parcel, that would give us another opportunity that we'd have that portion of that wetlands there, and we could use that as a future piece of land in that respect.
Yep.
So that's not a bad thing. For those of you who don't know, it was when we had to transfer land for the commons.
Yes.
So when the commons project took over and everything, we had to be able to shift land property around. And so we identified wetlands over right off the end of Progress Court and behind where the new DPW facility sits. And we were able to meet the state requirements for that.
Right.
So this would give us, land to use in the future if that case were to happen again.
One thing I was thinking about when I read through this was, we have our wastewater treatment plant over on Sunset, which is largely bordered by undevelopable land unless you were to build it up, which you would have to then have a compensating cut. Could this, because I know you mentioned this parcel could be used for wetland mitigation. Could this be used in that capacity at all or not, because it's not on the red cedar?
That's a good, Scott.
Likely not because of what you just said.
Yeah.
The reason that this other thing happened recently with the work over by Frandor was because it was in the same flood,
Same flow, floodplain.
flow and floodplain.
Mr. Bizzard, you look like you're thinking. Any comments?
No.
Okay, all right.
I think it's well worth pursuing. I don't see much downside at all.
Well, in my time here, and probably Noah's time here as well, I don't know if we've ever had anybody offer to donate the city land. So,
No, but there's added expenses to it.
sure, there is, and hopefully that would pay off in the future if we were to successfully, acquire this property. And there's still probably some work that needs to be done. Tim, what do you think?
It's a person matter within city council discretion. He can't just give it to you without your consent.
Right.
There is the drawback of the drain assessments and prospect of future ones. Property taken off the tax rolls, but prospects for development are low at this point. I can prepare a warranty deed. I'll need the legal description.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, Corey, please keep us abreast of it as it moves forward, and it's, it's kind of an interesting concept to have somebody donate land to the city.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, we have not received any correspondence, so I will move right ahead to city manager report. Thank you, Corey, for what you provided. Do you want to add anything to it?
Sure, just one note that wasn't in there. Today, we had our visit from the Ingham County Parks Commission regarding our 2 grant applications through Ingham County Parks and Trails Village. So we took a walk through Memorial Park for the planning and engineering grant for the trail project there, as well as down to the old car wash site, which we've submitted a grant application to develop with some parking and a access point into the river. I felt like the meeting went well. They had a couple others that they were doing today and then later this week. And then at the end of the month, on October 28th, we will have the opportunity to present to the whole commission. And so I did want to give council a heads up. That meeting is at 5:30 on a Monday. I expect to be back here by 7. And asked them today if there's any chance I could go first, because we've got a council meeting that night at 7. So I'm really pleased with how quickly this is moving. We just submitted the application a week and a half ago, had a site visit, and have the presentation next month. So unlike the state DNR Parks and Recs grants, which move very slowly, this one seems to be moving very quickly. So we'll cross our fingers that we'll get some good news.
Excellent, thank you.
Corey,
Yes, go ahead.
any chance I could go along?
I think it's open to the public and,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, great. Any questions for Corey regarding his manager's report? Okay. All right, Chief.
Nothing to report.
I haven't heard that in a while. Thanks. All right. We did receive a memo from Rachel. She's not here, but if you do have any questions for her, you can always direct those to her, or if you've got a question this evening, Corey might be able to answer it regarding her report. Okay, all right. And as always, we did receive a report from AGS with what's going on in the city as far as applications to, put in for permits, so that's always good to see growth or projects that are happening with our residents, whether it be residential or business. Does anybody have a subcommittee report that they would like to share from any board meetings?
Yes, I had the chance to sit as a substitute on the NISA meeting this last week. The meeting went very well. Some of the things that were brought up, we're doing a complete review of the NISA bylaws, trying to update those because there's some verbiage in there relating to Leroy Township Fire Hall and other things, and they're trying to Williamston Fire Hall, and they're trying to look how that relates back to update those items. So there's a good discussion on that, and then there was a really good discussion on the operational millage. They're thinking about having in the near future to look at staffing levels and putting on almost like a full-time second shift between the different areas. And then we had a really good discussion on online banking transfers and security protocols and how backup systems are done, and to make sure that those were all done appropriately. And then our one action item, there was a motion put out, there's an engine number 618, and there's a cracked frame underneath. And basically, they looked at options of getting a repair, so they had all the appropriate information for that. It was gonna cost a little over $140,000 to get that repaired, or if they needed to replace that engine, it was almost $700,000. So, it was decided that the repair would be much more applicable to the NISA board. So that moved forward, and that was approved up to $150,000. To get that all repaired and done, and it put that engine back in full repair. They were gonna update the LED lightings, the hoses, and all those things, and it extended that. I think they were talking about another 10 years or so out.
Wow, well, good use.
So that was moved forward. And then there was just some other side comments that we talked about training and the training between the different townships. And so it was a good meeting to sit on once.
Thank you for being there, appreciate it. Anything else?
I don't have the notes in front of me, but
From
planning commission, we did start to delve into the sign ordinance. I know it's kind of been a long time coming, so I'll keep you posted as that goes.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? No? All right. All right, we have another opportunity for audience participation, if anybody'd like to come forward. Nobody's rushing to the podium, all right. I will move right into council member comments then, and I will start to my left, Mr. Bizzard.
I have nothing.
All right, Mr. Bellinger.
Thank you for the interest in filling the vacancy of the seats. We have some excellent representation from our community, and I wish you all the best of luck.
All right,
Thank you for coming tonight.
Mr. Smith.
I second what you said, thank you guys for coming up, appreciate it.
Mr. Rhines.
No.
All right. Just to reiterate, everybody did receive the absentee voter flyer in the mail. Please make sure that you get those in a timely manner if you are looking to participate in the absentee voter. I think our clerk and our staff did a fantastic job on that. And this is a big undertaking. I don't know if anybody knows that, and I really appreciate the job that that our voters committee, election committee takes on every single time there's an election. So I appreciate that. I also received in the mail, the 27th anniversary for the Williamston Area Senior Center is going to be held October 24th at noon at their location on School Street. So if you're interested in helping the Senior Center celebrate their 27th anniversary, you can mark your calendars for that. The seasons have changed. It's getting a little bit colder. I've noticed that there's more branches out at curbside. Leaf pickup will start, so please just remember those services are available through the city. We appreciate all of our hard work that our DPW staff does to help take care of those things for our residents. And it gets dark a little bit earlier, so please be careful as you're coming through town, you know, with school buses and kids and everything. And pretty soon we'll be going through the time change. A reminder, as of October 1st, there's no parking on the streets from 2 to 5 a.m. because you never know when inclement weather could come through, and our DPW would need to get through and take care of those streets for us. Also, good luck to our Williamston boys soccer team who are playing a playoff game right now. So hopefully that's they're doing well and they'll bring home a win to Williamston. And that is it for this evening.